this chapter, we are going to study a real intertemporal model with investment. Basically, what are we going to do? So we are going to combine, we have learned in the previous chapter, this including households. They're doing consumption and leisure choice, and then they make intertemporal choice between consumption and saving. And the firm's decision in terms of demanding a certain amount of labor to produce and to make profit. We'll bring everything together, and then we're going to see how the model is going to generate in largest wage and the interest rate. From the model, we're going to see how government policy, for example, if the government change the spending, how that affect the equilibrium, both in terms of price and in quantity, which is real GDP. So this is a roadmap for this chapter. So we are starting with the real intertemporal model, like I just said. We're going to have a household side. We are going to have firm side. From this model, we're going to understand the investment decision of the firm. Actually, that's the new things we have compared to what we have studied before. Based on this model, we're going to see how macroeconomic shocks affect the economy. This including, say, for example, public spending shock, government spending, or if there's a change in wealth, or if there's a technological progress or slowing down, how that affect the aggregate economy. So that's what we're going to do. This is an overview of the model. In this model, we have two periods, current and a future. Right, so two periods. Remember, when we study the consumer's choice in chapter 4, there's only one period. It's like static model. So in that chapter, so the consumer is making choice between consumption and leisure. Right. So now we are going to extend that into two periods. But these two periods we have seen before. Like in chapter 9, when we study the consumer's consumption and saving decision. Remember, they're trying to smooth the consumption between today and tomorrow. So we'll look at two periods. So here, we are going to have two periods. Remember, this two is kind of simplification. Two is going to represent many. So in that sense, this is going to be a dynamic model. Dynamic means you're going to have today, tomorrow. The consumer side, you have a representative consumer, meaning everyone the same. Then they're going to make the same decision. Certainly, this is a simplification. But in reality, households are different. Different in many ways. Their education, their income, their age, even their tastes. Right? But this representative consumer is a good starting point. Consumer, they are going to make consumption and a saving decision. This is just between today and tomorrow, like in temporal. But certainly, they also make leisure choice, as we have studied in chapter 4. Representative firm, they're going to hire labor. Now, there's a new dimension or new things the firm need to consider. They need to invest. This is similar to households, also save, but firm, they need to invest. They invest for future period so that they can have capital or certain amount of capital for their production in the future. And in each period, meaning current and future, the firm need to hire laborers. That's the same as we had before. To close this model, we are going to have a government. What the government does, the government is going to spend, right? So they spend in G, right? Just think about the government need to finance national defense or finance the war, or the government need to provide some infrastructure for the spending. But where the money coming from? The money is coming from tax, right? So tax, so here we simplify. We just only have lump sum tax, right? What lump sum tax? It just says, regardless who you are, everyone is going to pay the same amount of tax, right? To simplify the matter. Government also live for two periods, meaning today and tomorrow, or current and the future. Right? So remember, this is like a dynamic model. So this is an overview of the real intertemporal model we are going to study. To summarize, we consider dynamic model with two periods. There are three players in this economy. We have a consumer, firm, and the government. So this model. Now we are going to look at two different markets. So in the first market is called labor market. The other market is going to be the capital market. The labor market, what they're going to trade? They're going to trade labor. And so for each market, then so there's a price. But what's going to be the price here is going to be wage. And in this market, who are the supply side? Who are the demand side? And certainly the households is the supply side. And the firm, they demand labor, right? So let's start with this labor market. And later we are going to look at capital market, right? And clearly, so for each market, so we have two sides. We have households, we have firm. And from this market, you can see so how their behavior is going to interact and how their behavior is going to determine, right? Oh, by the way, so earlier we say there's a government. Right? So in some sense, government is kind of on top of these two. So government is kind of, so first these two firms and the consumers, they interact with each other in two markets. One is the labor market, the other is capital market. And then the government is kind of intervene or mitigate or interference their behavior, but for some good reasons, right? Now let's start with labor market. From the labor market, let's first start with the consumer. Represent the consumer. So this is their budget constraint. So we have seen this before, right? Pretty much the same. But here, basically, we combine chapter 4, in which we study the consumption and leisure choice, with chapter 9, in which we look at the consumer's consumption and saving decision. Now, in the current period, or in the first period of the economy, the consumer is going to have income from labor supply, profit, they pay tax. Okay. So where the wage income coming from? Here, W is a wage. W is a wage rate. H is the total hours available. Just think about, so every day you have 24 hours in total. On average, each of us sleep for 8 hours. You have 16 non-sleeping hours. This is this H. Minus L, L stands for leisure, right? So you may want to watch some movies. You want to spend time with family. So those are not working hours. So H minus L, so that's the hours you can work. But L is your choice. H is what you endow. So W is wage rate. As we are going to see, is going to determine by supply and demand. But what's pi? Pi actually is coming from the firm side. Because at the end, firm is going to own by the households. T is a tax. So you can see this tax is independent of your income. So hence this is a lump sum tax. So in the future, we will study distortion tax is going to have impact on your labor supply. But now just simplify, tax is lump sum. It's not distortionary. Now, similar in the future period, or by the way, on the left-hand side, so those are the total income. This total income is going to finance consumption and the saving. SP stands for private saving. Right? So why you want to save? Because you want to smooth your consumption between current and the future. Now let's look at future period. It's pretty much the same. So you have wage income, you have profit, you have pay tax. One more term. So this is your saving income. So ASP is how much you save, and 1 plus R is the interest rate, right? So interest rate is going to determine in a different market. Let's go back. So by the way, here we look at labor market. Then so we are going to have a different market. We are going to see the determination of interest rate. Right? For the moment, so when we look at this labor market, we take the interest rate as given. Here we are going to see what determines wage. That's what we're going to focus. Right? And finally, two more things. Prime here is denote future. Right? So you see without prime, it's denote current. C prime denotes future. Since number one. Since number two, so look here in the future period, there's no s. Certainly you can write the s prime, but s prime must equal to 0 because there's no third period. It doesn't make much economic sense for the households to save if there's no future, right? So this is the consumer's current period and the future period budget constraint. So we can combine them together. So essentially we just sum them together. Let's go back. We just add them together. And then so we can cancel these from here to here. Okay, left side, right side, if you add them together. But certainly you need to do something. Either, so in the second equation, you divide everything by 1 plus r, or in the first equation, you multiply everything by 1 plus r. We choose to divide everything by 1 plus r for the second one, 1 over 1 plus r, or we divide by. So now we'll end up with this equation. Right. And then this interpretation is very clear. On the right-hand side is your total present value of your lifetime income. Right? So this is including current income, plus your future income. For the future income, you need to normalize by 1 plus r. Remember 1 over 1 plus r, that's the relative price of future goods. How we understand that? So $1 you have today, if you don't spend, tomorrow you're gonna have 1 plus r. So meaning 1 plus r units of goods is equal to $1, 1 unit of goods today. Hence, so the future goods are going to be cheaper because it's the same $1. You can either buy 1 unit of goods today, or you buy 1 plus r unit of goods tomorrow. So hence future is cheaper, and usually r is positive, right? So this 1 over 1 plus r is the relative price of the future good. Okay. So the right-hand side is the present value. So the present value just says, so it determines in terms of current price. Present value of your lifetime income. So this including current income and plus future income. That's what we call the lifetime income. You use this present value of lifetime income. What you can do, you need to finance current consumption and the future consumption. Okay, so future consumption you need to normalize by its price. It's not even as price. So saving disappeared, right? Saving essentially is trying to construct certain C and a certain C prime that satisfy or that is maximize your lifetime utility, right? Or in other words, the saving is used to smooth your consumption. Right? So this is a consumer's lifetime budget. Now, in terms of consumer behavior, here this slide summarizes what we have learned before. Current period and the future period. So this is what we learned in chapter 4, right? The consumer choose consumption leisure such that the marginal rate of substitution between leisure and consumption equal to wage. This is true both in the current period and the future period, right? So please review chapter 4. But the intuition is very simple. So in margin, so you want to make sure the cost equal to the benefit. So what is the cost if I work for 1 more hour? So I'm going to lose some utility. I'm going to lose some happiness from marginal utility, right? So this is marginal rate of substitution. So to what extent you can substitute leisure for consumption, right? So what are you going to lose? But 1 more hour's work or 1 month's leisure, right? So what is the benefit, which is a wage? Right, so in the margin, you want to make sure these two equal to each other, right? So this is what we discussed in chapter 4. Now we have another new margin, which is intertemporal. So you are going to make a consumption choice, consumption and saving choice, or consumption today, tomorrow choice, such that as equal to its relative price, okay, 1 plus r. So this is what we discussed in chapter 9. Please review that. But the logic is the same. So in the margin, you always want to make sure the marginal cost equal to the marginal benefit, right? So this is going to summarize consumers' behavior, right? So here is going to see so how the consumer's labor supply choice is going to look like in equilibrium. So the reason why here we focus on labor supply is because right now we focus on the labor market, right? So we want to see the determination of wage. Okay. So later we're going to look at the saving decision. Okay. So for now, let's focus on consumers' labor supply behavior. Okay. Number one, current labor supply increase with the real wage. Right. So certainly in chapter 4, we have discussed if real wage increase, there are two effects. One is substitution effect. The other is income effect. What is substitution effect? If real wage increase, meaning leisure becomes more expensive, and then so you want to reduce leisure. Okay, you want to reduce leisure, or you want to work more. Okay, and then so you're going to increase consumption, right? So because you care about consumption and leisure. If leisure becomes more expensive, you want to substitute cheaper goods, which is C, to leisure. If you want to reduce leisure because it becomes more expensive, that means labor supply is going to increase. This is substitution effect. Now, what's the income effect? Income effect says, so if wage increase, if nothing else change, so your income increase. If your income increase because consumption and leisure both are normal goods, hence both is going to increase. Hence leisure is going to increase. Labor supply is going to decrease, right? So now you can see, so the wage increase is going to have two opposite effects on labor supply. But for now, we are going to assume substitution effect dominates income effect. Right? If that's the case, and then the labor supply is going to increase with wage. Wage increase. So you're going to see the labor supply H minus L is going to increase. Okay. Second, labor supply increase with the increase in real interest rate. Why is that? So this intuition essentially is coming from chapter 9. For the consumer, so they cares about C over C prime, right? So that's what we discussed in chapter 9. Now here we add another dimension. They cares about L versus L prime. Okay. Remember, so when we talk about C and C prime, so C prime, the price is 1 over 1 plus R. If R increase, and then so C prime becomes cheaper. So hence you're going to consume more C prime, right? So this is substitution. Now, similarly, L and L prime, if interest rate increase, and then so this decrease, L prime becomes cheaper, and certainly you want to reduce your leisure today, you want to increase your leisure tomorrow. So this is an intertemporal substitution event, right? So that's why labor supply, because if you decrease the leisure, and then your labor supply is going to increase. So when there's an increase in real interest rate, future leisure becomes cheaper. And then so you want to consume more future leisure, and then you reduce today's leisure, meaning today you're going to work more. Now the third observation, increase in lifetime wealth is going to reduce labor supply. So this is like income effect, because consumption, leisure, they are all normal goods. If your lifetime wealth increase, and certainly you want to consume more C and L, and hence your labor supply is going to decrease. Example of lifetime wealth increase, maybe because government reduce your tax, right? So those are three observations we have regarding to consumers' labor supply behavior. Now we use graph to summarize what we just discussed. First, consumers' labor supply is going to increase with wage. Right? So this is labor supply, and here we just denote labor supply. And S means supply. And we have a parenthesis R, meaning so here our discussion is for some given interest rate. But again, so in the next market, we are going to discuss what determines the interest rate. right? For now, let's focus on wage. Okay, this is from the consumer side. Again, so why labor supply is increasing with wage? Because here we assume substitution effect dominates the income effect, right? So there are two effects when wage increase, right? So there are two effects on your leisure supply, leisure, and hence your labor supply. The second observation, increase in real interest rate is going to increase your labor supply today. Why? Because real interest rate increase, if R increase, and then so the future goods become cheaper, right? So 1/1 plus R is going to decrease, right? Future goods cheaper. Hence, you're going to increase future L, you're going to decrease current L, so meaning the labor supply is going to increase, right? So it's going to shift to the right. This is when wage doesn't change, right? So for any wage, you can see if R increase, your labor supply is going to shift to the right, right? So this is second observation. Now the third observation, right? If there's increase in lifetime wealth, so it become the government reduce tax and give you some transfer, right? And then your labor supply is going to decrease. This again, this is for any given wage, right? So any level of wage, you're going to reduce your labor supply. Why? Because leisure are normal goods. That's going to increase if you have more wealth, more income to consume. Okay? So this is regarding to consumers' behavior, right? Labor supply. Now we look at the other side of we're looking at other side of the market. Again, so this is labor market. Okay. So in the other side, we are going to have firm, right? The firm is going to have current and future. So they cares about current and future. Now let's see how their current and future behavior look like. In the current period, the firm has a production, right? Y is the output. Z stands for TFP. So this is what we have discussed in growth. Or simply this is just a level of technology, right? F is a production function. So F essentially is the way we convert K, which stands for capital, N, which stands for labor. So that's the way we convert K and N into goods, final goods. So that's the production function. And similarly, in the future period, again, so prime is going to denote future. In the future period, so the output is going to determine by the technology in the future and capital and labor in the future, right? So capital and labor in the future, right? So this is what we're going to have, okay? Right, so this is the firm's production technology in the current and the future. Now, this is something new, right? So this is something we haven't seen before, but it's very similar. We have some similar discussion. This is for firm, right? So firm, when they start with the current period, they have a certain amount of capital, right? K, right? Let's go back. So they have K. K stands for capital, right? So this is when they start the current period. Now, at the end of the current period, so this K becomes 1 minus D times K. What is D? D is depreciation. So how we understand depreciation? Give you two examples. In human beings, we will age. There's an aging process, right? This is natural and it's inevitable, right? So this means eventually you're going to get old, your ability to work is going to decrease over time. And so this reflects this D. Now, the other example, if you have a car or a phone or a computer, this is not going to last forever. Your phone, usually people keep their phone for 2 to 3 years. Yes, technically you can use the same phone for like maybe 5 years or 6 years. I never had that experience, but usually I just change my phone every 2 to 3 years. That means over 2 to 3 years to use, so the phone has basically lost its value, lost its functionality. And this D is going to reflect the fact that phone your phone you have is going to lose its functionality over time, this depreciation. Now there's second term, I, which is investment. What's the investment? So basically you just add more capital. Like in business, you expand, right? So you expand your factories, you acquire more computers, cars, machineries, right? So these two things together is going to determine the level of capital you're going to have in your business in the future period. Okay, so that's similar to the consumer. So the consumer has saving decision, right? But similarly, so here's I essentially is also like saving decision, as we are going to see later. So this I is most clear with the consumer's saving. Right? Now let's look at the firm's current and the future profit. From there, we can see the firm's optimal decision. Okay. Start with the current period. Right? So the current period, so you have pi is profit equal to output y minus w times n, okay, which is the labor cost minus investment. Right? And I want to emphasize here, we simplify in the sense we don't consider the capital cost, right? So here we just simplify, right? So we may add them later. As a matter of fact, the firm also need to pay for the capital they use, right? Let's simplify for now, okay? So this is pi. All right, so pi prime, which is profit in the future period, right? So this is including the output you can produce in the next period and the wage cost you have to pay in the next period, right? So top prime is the wage rate in the next period, and M prime is labor you're going to hire. As we're going to see, those are labor demand, right? Now, what is this term? What is this term? So let's go back. You enter the second period, right? So you have, this is what you have. Okay, so you have 1 minus d times k plus I. To enter the second period, you're going to have k prime. Now, after one period, similarly, so there's some depreciation. So the k prime is going to become 1 minus d because you're going to depreciate over time, over one period, right? Times k prime. So this is what left at the end of second period, right? So this is the capital. Just imagine if you have a phone, right? At the end of the second period, it's not going to become worthless. It's going to have some value, right? What are we going to do? Because there's no third period, now you're not going to throw away, right? Now here we are going to make some bold assumption, but this is intuitive. This is good to interpret it. So saying that the firm, they can liquidate, meaning so they're going to sell the remaining capital to the market. Or alternatively, you can think about the firm has a technology to convert the remaining capital into goods and one by one. Okay, so this is not a crazy assumption. Okay, so later if we extend this to multi-period, this is going to disappear. But in reality, this is very intuitive, right? The firm, yes, if they close the door, they can just sell their remaining capital to other firms or the business, right? So this is not something unreasonable, right? But here, this help us for our analysis, right? To summarize, the firm has profit in the first period, pi here, and the pi prime in the second period. In the second period, there's a new term. So at the end, they can liquidate the remaining capital, whatever capital is remained. Okay. Now for the firm, what they're going to care? So they're going to care about here, present value. So the present value is actually captured by here. Present value of profit. So this is including profit in the first period, pi, and profit in the second period, pi prime. But how are we going to add them together? So we are going to look at their present value, right? So pi today, so the price is 1. We normalize this as 1. And the pi prime in the second period, the price we're going to, this is going to equal to 1 over 1 plus r, right? So we have discussed this in previous chapter, right? So this relative price of the good in the future period, right? So given the interest rate r, okay. So we take interest rate as given. Okay, so we are going to discuss the determination of interest rate in the future slide, right? So this is what firms cares. They cares about this V. V is going to summation of pi and the pi prime, but through the operation of this R, right? Now, even though we haven't studied that before, but this is that's pretty much like some insight we have in the previous chapter, right? In chapter 4, we have studied the firm's labor demand. So the firm's labor demand schedule is going to be the marginal product of labor for the firm, which is going to be downward slope, right? So that's given back here. So labor demand is going to decrease with wage, right? So basically the firm is going to demand, I mean, in the margin, the demand, the labor such that the marginal productivity of labor, marginal productivity labor equal to wage. But remember, there's diminishing marginal return to labor, right? So this is marginal productivity, okay? Marginal productivity of labor, right? This marginal productivity of labor or marginal return, marginal productivity of labor is decreasing. Meaning, so the more labor you have, the lower the marginal productivity of labor. So that means if wage rise, in order to keep up with the wage, you must hire less. All right. So this is something we discussed in. This is something we have discussed in chapter 4. I'll leave that for you. Okay. To summarize, MP and labor, marginal productive labor is must equal to wage. Okay? If this increase, right, how you keep up, or how you keep this inequality? So hence you have to reduce labor demand, because reduced labor demand, that's going to increase the marginal productivity. So that's what happens. All right. So now let's see, so what can change, what can cause a change in the labor demand, right? So consider two possibilities. Either there's a change in TFP or there's a change in capital. Let's say, for example, if there's increase in TFP or if there's increase in physical capital. So in either case, we are going to see an increase in marginal productivity. Okay, so now if there's an increase in marginal productivity, and then certainly that allows you to hire more labor, right? So remember in the previous slide, so I see, so the marginal productivity, if given the wage, if wage is fixed, if the marginal productivity increase, in order to keep this equal, you're trying to bring this down. How you can bring this down? You're going to hire more. Or in other words, like I just said, so this Z increase and the K increase is going to allow you to hire more, okay, at the same wage, not because the marginal productivity of your worker increase. Okay. Now it's time to bring everything together, right? So we start with labor supply from the household side. Okay, so we have this increasing function, right? So why this increasing function? Because the substitution effect is going to dominate the income effect of wage, right? And also I want to emphasize here, this is for given interest rate. Okay, where's the interest coming from? It's coming in the next slide. Now, the labor demand is coming from the firm side. That's what we just discussed, right? It's a downward slope. Why is downward slope? Because the marginal productivity of labor is decreasing with labor you hire, right? But in the margin, you want to keep your marginal productivity labor equal to wage, okay? Hence it becomes decreasing. Now in this market, so in the clear, it must be the case, they are equal to each other. And clearly, so if this above or below, you can see there's going to have some adjustment process, like you have studied in your micro class or in principle of macroeconomics. Right, so leave that for you. But then in equilibrium, so this must equal to each other. Whenever there's a, like here, there's a surplus, right? If there's a surplus, meaning there's unemployment, or if there's a shortage, meaning so you cannot find the worker you need. In either case, the market is going to adjust, the wages are going to adjust, right? Until we settle in the middle point. At this middle point, not only we have a wage, we also have N star, and this N star is going to give us the level of GDP, because here, so the firm is essentially the produce is going to give you the total output of the economy, right? So we are going to see the determination of wage and labor supply and the output. Again, I want to emphasize everything we discuss here. This is for a given interest rate. Because when we change the interest rate, or for some reason the interest rate change, you're going to see the equilibrium is going to be affected as well, right? So now we are going to move to the second market, right? So this is going to be a goods market, and in this market, we are going to see the determination of price, the other price, which is interest rate, right? So this is what we're going to, this is what we are going to study, right? So now let's see what happens in this goods market. Okay. All right. So first, let's look at the current demand for consumption goods, right? The current demand for consumption goods. First, we have MPC, the marginal propensity to consume, right? So this is going to increase in demand for consumption goods induced by 1 unit increase in current real income, right? Just for 1 unit increase of your income, how much you're willing to spend for consumption goods, this MPC, right? And we also have studied the intertemporal substitution, right? So the demand for consumption goods will decrease in real interest rate, right? Because substitution effect. And finally, the increase in lifetime wealth is going to increase demand for consumption goods, right? So this is essentially what we have discussed in the previous chapter. Now, given those insights we have learned, so we're going to have a few graphs to summarize the behavior of consumers' demand for consumption goods, right? Here we are going to focus on the current period because the discussion for the future period is going to be similar. And plus, in the current period is more interesting because it's going to affect by interest rate, or it's going to help us to determine interest rate. But that's what we're interested in. Right? So first, your consumption is going to increase with your income, right? So this is exactly what we mentioned here. Increase lifetime wealth is going to increase your consumption, and the income is going to increase your consumption, right? It's increasing. The slope of this demand equal to MPC. What is slope? That just says this is essentially the slope here, right? The slope is here. It's the vertical difference divided by the horizontal difference. But what is horizontal difference? This is to change your income. Vertical difference to change your consumption. Here I use delta to denote change, right? But now if you use change in C divided by change in Y, that's exactly the marginal propensity to consume. And I want to emphasize the marginal propensity to consume must less than 1, because for $1, so usually you want to consume some and you save some. What you want to save? You want to save for future. You have a future period to live in this model, right? So MPC must less than 1, or the slope must be less than 1. Okay? So this is the demand for current goods or consumption function in the current period. Now, if there's a change in interest rate, if the real interest rate increase from R1 to R2, what this means? This means the future goods becomes cheaper. This thing is going to decrease. And then, so you want to increase your C in the future, and you want to decrease C in the current period. Hence, your consumption, your demand for consumption is going to fall when the interest rate change. Right. Now, on the other hand, if there's a change in lifetime wealth, say for example, if your tax is get cut, if the government provide you with some subsidy, and then so your consumption is going to increase. Okay, not only current but also future. And here we focus on the current. Hence, your consumption function is going to move up. This is for any level of current income, right? So if the lifetime wealth increase. All right, so now we can look at the demand for current goods. So what we are going to do, so start with C, this is one part, right? So this is what we just discussed. And then we have I, this is investment. And finally, we have government, right? So we add them together to largely preserve the shape. So like G is kind of fixed. I is going to have similar behavior like C. Okay, so we add them together. So that's going to give you the demand. But clearly, this demand is going to determine by Y, right? So this is what we just discussed in here, right? So C is going to be the function of Y, right? This is where we start. Okay. And then in equilibrium, so your current income is going to giving a current any level of current income is going to induce a certain amount of C and I and G, right? Or in other words, so this is going to generate a certain amount of actual demand, right? So these two must equal to each other. Otherwise, there's going to be an adjustment process. Okay, so this is something so we have discussed in principle of what macroeconomics. Let me give you an example. So if we start with here, meaning so we overestimate, we've been too optimistic, right? So this is what we believe. So the income or the GDP is going to end here. Now, given the GDP is here, and then households, firms, government, they collectively they are going to demand this amount. But now you can see this is essentially they are going to some surplus, or you have some goods unsold, or the inventory is going to pile up. So that's going to send a signal to the business. So we overshoot, and then they are going to reduce their production. So which means the output is going to fall to this direction. On the other hand, if we are here, meaning we've been too pessimistic. Now what happens is this is what we produce. This level is what we produced, but this is what we demand, right? So collectively, so they're going to demand this level. So clearly, there's a shortage, meaning so your inventory is going to fall very quickly. That's going to send a signal to the business. So we have been too pessimistic. We underestimate demand, or we underestimate the economy. So hence, they are going to increase the production, increase the supply. So the economy is going to move to this direction. So until we reach the middle point, nothing is going to change, because whatever you produce is going to exactly meet with some demand from consumption, investment, or from the government. Okay, so the market is going to clear, right? So this is how we did. That's how we're going to have this equilibrium demand. Again, this is for any given level of interest rate. Okay. Now let's see how interest rate is going to change your demand. Right. So if interest rate increase, right? So if you increase from R1 to R2, okay? Like we just discussed, so the consumption is going to fall, right? Why? Because the future goods becomes relatively cheaper, right? So you want to substitute future goods for today's goods. Hence, your C is going to fall. Similarly, I is going to fall, right? Because it becomes more expensive to invest if the interest rate increase, right? Right. So in either case, so the curve is going to fall down, and then so we are going to cross 45-degree line. This is how we determine the actual demand or actual GDP, right? And then, so this is going to fall from Y1 to Y2, Y1 to Y2. So that means when interest rate increase from R1 to R2, your GDP is going to change from Y1 to Y2. So this, when we go to this direction, the GDP goes to this direction. So that's how we end up with this aggregate or output demand curve. This is in terms of interest rate. Right? So how interest rate change affects the aggregate output demand. Right. So now let's see what can cause this curve to shift. Okay. So here we consider 4 possible scenarios. Okay. If there's a decrease in the present value of tax. Okay. So what it means? So that literally means your income. Sorry, that literally means your total income or total wealth is going to increase. And then, so there's an income effect on your consumption, and then your consumption is going to increase, and certainly, so the output demand is going to increase, meaning shift to the right. Let's go back here, shift to the right, meaning for any level of interest rate, you're going to demand more. Why are you going to demand more? Because the C is going to increase, right? The second, if there's increase in future income, yeah, this is pretty much similar, right? So if the increase in future income or decrease in present value of tax, both cases is going to lead to an increase in leads to an increase in your total income for the household, and the household is going to increase the consumption. Now the third factor, increase in future TLP. So that just means the investment becomes more profitable, right? Why investment becomes more profitable? Because by investing $1 for the firm, and in the future it's going to bring me a lot of output, right? Because of the TLP increase, right? Because why I invest, because I want to expand for future. And the future, so this I is going to translate into future capital. And this future capital is going to bring me some additional goods through this production function. But this production function is going to largely relies on the future TLP, or the higher future TLP is going to make the production in the future more efficient, right? Sorry. Now, the third one, if there's a decrease in current capital stock, right? So this is going to increase the marginal productivity of capital. So that's also give you incentive to invest, right? So in either case, you can see, so this curve is going to move out. That's for any given level of R. So we just fix R, but because of one of the 4 factors which is mentioned in the previous slides happened. And then this is going to increase either through C or through I. This is going to increase. We end up with higher Y, meaning we fix R if one of the 4 factors we just talked about happen. And then, so we are going to produce more, hence, we are going to demand more, hence the aggregate demand is going to shift to the right. Okay. Now here we are going to look at firm's investment decision. So this is crucially important so that we can have a complete picture regarding to the demand side. All right. So what firm is going to do in terms of investment? Firm they are going to invest to a certain point such that marginal benefit equal to marginal cost. But now we need to understand what is the marginal benefit and what is the marginal cost. Right? Start with marginal cost. The marginal cost is 1. It's 1. Why? Because if I give up So in order to invest 1 unit, what I have to do, I have to give up 1 unit of current profit. Okay, so I'm going to postpone the distribution of the profit and use that profit and the potential profit and put into the investment. So that's why the marginal cost of investment is 1. Simply, you just give up 1 unit of goods that you can distribute to your shareholders or owners. Now let's look at what is the marginal benefit. So the marginal benefit, so you have 2 parts. First, for each dollar or each unit of goods you invest, is going to translate into 1 unit of, it's going to translate into 1 unit of physical capital in the next period. And in the next period, this 1 unit physical capital is going to give you this amount of product, right? By the way, why this is going to 1? Let's just write down K prime. Remember, K prime equal to what? Equal to 1 minus D times K plus I, right? Because for each unit of investment, it's going to add 1 unit of K prime. But this K prime is going to work through the production function in the future. Right, so that's going to give you MPK, MP prime, MPK prime, whatever. Right, so the marginal productivity of capital in the next period. But that's not the whole story. Remember, at the end of the next period, so you can liquidate your remaining capital. Right, so what is the remaining capital? You invest 1 unit in the next period, you're gonna get you're gonna get 1 minus D. You're gonna get 1 minus D, right? So this is after depreciation. This is remaining capital you're gonna have at the end of the future period, and you can liquidate, and that's going to give you some value. To summarize, numerator give you the total value, total goods. 1 unit of investment can bring you this in terms of the future period. Now you have to divide by 1 plus R because you need to convert into today, because everything, your decisions regarding today, right? Like we just see here. So this is today. Today you're going to give up 1 unit of goods. And then, so it's going to bring you this amount of goods you're going to get in the future. And then so divide by 1 plus R, that's what you're going to get. Or what that means for you from the point of view of today. And then in equilibrium, so you are going to equal this, right? Sorry. So you're going to equalize this marginal benefit to marginal cost. Okay. So now if this equal to 1, if this equal to 1, and some simple algebra is going to give us this one, right? So this is essentially the marginal product equal to the net marginal product equal to the interest rate, right? So what do we understand? So if you don't invest, right, so you can, so this market, you can think about there's like 2 ways. One, there's something giving the interest rate, like in the bond, give you R. Alternatively, you can invest in capital, right? But this capital is going to, the net return of the capital equal to marginal activity minus D because there's a depreciation, right? So in equilibrium, so that's what this in equilibrium, this is what is going to determine the firm's investment decision, right? Now, given this firm's investment decision, so we can have an optimal investment schedule for the pretended firm, or in other words, so this curve is going to tell you how firms choose amount of investment goods they're going to demand depending on the interest rate. How we understand why this is a downward slope? This is pretty much similar to the labor demand. Okay, remember, marginal productivity is decreasing both for capital and labor. Now, if interest rate increase, right? So here, remember, these things must equal to R. If interest rate increase, and you have to keep up with this equality, you must make sure this is going to increase. How you can increase the marginal productivity of capital? And the only way you can do is just reduce your capital, meaning you're going to reduce your investment. So hence, this curve, when this increase, this goes to this direction. That's why this is a downward slope, downward slope, right? So the investment decision of a representative firm is decreasing with interest rate. Okay. So now, what can cause the curve to shift? Right. So if there's a decrease in K, or if the future TFP is expected to rise, it's going to increase. Why? Let me write down. So at the end, in equilibrium, so first make sure MP prime K minus D equal to R. If K decrease, right? So essentially, so that just means, so this sense is going to increase if you don't change anything, right? But in order to bring this down, so you can invest more, right? You can invest more. Okay, so that's why this goes to right. And similarly, okay, by the way, so why this thing is going to increase? That's coming from here. Let's go back. It's coming from here. Right? So if K decrease, and then K prime is going to decrease. K prime decrease, marginal productivity of capital is going to increase. Now you want to maintain this marginal productivity of capital because the interest rate doesn't change. So K decrease, you must increase I. So that's going to maintain your level of marginal productivity capital. On the other hand, if TFP increase and this is going to increase as well, and hence, in order to maintain this equality, you can invest more. So bring this down. Or you have incentive to invest until you reach a point there's no profit to make. Right? Okay, so left-hand side is the cost, this is the benefit, right side is the cost. Because the more you invest, the more marginal gain you can have. Right? So now maybe we can look at a numerical example to understand the firm's optimal investment decision. Okay. So this is the capital they have, right? So this capital, I mean, in the future, certainly it's going to move with investment, right? So the more you invest, the more capital you have. Now, this capital is going to determine how much you can produce, right? It's clear this is increasing. And the V, this is what? So V is the profit, the present value of lifetime profit. So pi prime divided by 1 plus R. Right? Now, if you look at this number, and then clearly, so this V is going to reach optimal is in the middle, right? So clearly you can see this like a hump shape. Meaning, so when you this hump shape in terms of K prime or in terms of I, you increase I, so first this profit increase. But then, so gradually, so the profit starts to decline, right? And what's the secret? So it's essentially, so here, so this is the marginal benefit, right? It's the marginal benefit. So the marginal benefit is kind of declining, right? Declining. And reach to a certain point, it becomes a negative. And if you compare the interest rate, right? So as long as this is greater than R, but certainly if you go to here, it's going to be less than R, because usually R is most positive. Certainly it's not, you are not going to go to this direction. But you're going to keep doing, because the interest rate cannot be that high, right? So as long as it's greater than the interest rate, so it's going to be profitable for you to invest, right? So you're going to invest to a point when this investment is going to bring you positive value. I mean, you're comparing the cost versus benefit. Now we are ready to kind of bring everything together. Let's first look at the output supply, because we should look at output demand. Okay. Start with here. So what do we have? So this labor supply, that's what we discussed earlier, right? So labor supply, right? So in terms of wage, right? And then so this is labor demand, right? That's what we already discussed, right? So for any interest rate, so you're gonna have equilibrium. So now the interest rate change, if the interest rate change, okay, and then so you're gonna have a different output, right? So that's what we discussed earlier. So hence you can see, because so from here, so together we are gonna get the right hand side, output supply. So output supply is going to increase with interest rate, right? So interest rate increase, essentially the household is going to take less leisure, and this is supply. Now we are going to look at the government, and then so we are ready to close this model. So what the government does, the government, they have to spend the finance, G and G prime. Just think about they have water finance, or they have some infrastructure to provide. That is the value equal to G in the current period and the G prime in the future period. But again, so we use 1 over 1 plus R to normalize. Sorry, we use 1 over 1 plus R normalize the future value or the future cost. Okay. On the right hand side, this is what the firm, sorry, what the income, the government can have, right? So the government has two possible income. So they have income from current tax T, and they have income from future tax T prime. Again, so which is normalized by 1 over 1 plus R, right? So this is a government. Okay. So now let's see. So if there's an increase in current or future government spending, how would that affect supply? Okay. So start with this one. So if the current increase spending, and then this just means the households, they're going to have lower income. Why? Because the spending, look at here, if the government increase spending, if the government increase spending, if government increase spending, it must be the case, they must increase tax. If tax increase and the households, their income or their wealth is going to decline. That implies they are going to reduce leisure. Implies they are going to supply more labor. So that's exactly why this labor supply is going to shift to the right. When it shifts to the right, you can see, so the labor supply is going to increase. Equilibrium labor supply is going to increase, and output is going to increase. Hence, the total output supply is going to shift to the right when the government increase spend. Now, on the other hand, if there's an increase in current TFP, similarly, so this is going to have impact on the labor market, but now it's going to work through the supply side. Right. Sorry. When I say supply side, it means firm. But if you look at labor market is going to have the demand side. The firm is going to demand more labor, right? Because the TFP increase, right? Remember, so the firm always just choose MPN equal to wage, right? Given the same amount of wage, so the TFP increase, but this thing is going to increase. And to keep this or to break it even, the firm has the incentive to hire more, or if the more they hire, so they are going to make more profit because this marginal benefit is the cost. They are going to hire until a point so they equal to each other. So essentially, they are going to keep adding more labor demand until this equal to each other. Hence, this curve is going to shift to the right. If it shifts to the right, it's going to cross at a higher level of labor supply, meaning so the outputs are going to increase. Right? And then, so you can see, you can see, given the level of interest rate, if there's an increase in TLP, so the curve, the supply is going to shift to the right. Okay. Now we ready to bring everything together, right? So the complete real intertemporal model. So we have two market on the left-hand side. This is a labor market. So they cross each other is going to determine the wage and the labor supply. On the right-hand side, so you have demand, sorry. So you have demand for goods and you have supply for goods. And then they cross each other, right? So you're going to determine the interest rate, the internal interest rate. So demand, so remember, so how we came up with demand. So this demand largely coming from the consumer, right? So remember, when the interest rate increase, okay, so the consumer is going to substitute future goods for today's goods, or they're going to consume less. If interest rate increase, it's also have impact on the investment decision. Maybe go back, kind of quick review, right? So let's look at it here. Right? So the investment decision, okay? So demand, so if interest rate increase, the demand for investment goods is going to decrease. It's going to decrease, right? Now remember, so let's go back here. Go back to here, right? So here, so because this demand is determined by consumption, investment, energy. If interest rate increase, this would C and I to fall, and certainty, so we are going to end up with a lower Y. So that is why, let's go back to the very end. That's why, so the demand is a decreasing function of interest rate, right? Because higher interest rate leads to C and I both to fall, right? Now look at supply side. So why the supply is the increase with interest rate? So that's what we just discussed. Right? So if the interest rate increase here, if interest rate increase, where we are, okay, sorry. Apology, okay. Now, anyway, so we have earlier slides discussed that, but it's similar to here. If interest rate increase, and then households going to reduce their current leisure, they're going to work more. Why? Because future leisure become cheaper. They're going to substitute future leisure for current leisure. If they reduce current leisure, meaning they are going to increase labor supply. If labor supply increase and the output is going to increase. That is why the supply is increased with interest rate. Now in equilibrium, so the supply means the goods and demand for goods must equal to each other. Otherwise, they're going to have some adjustment. Either the surplus or the shortage, and then there's some adjustment either from the supply side and demand side until they clear. Right. To summarize here, so we are going to have an interest rate, right? So we're going to have an interest rate that's going to clear this goods market, right? So now we have complete this model, right? So what this model tells us is that so you are going to have two markets. One is the labor market, the other is goods market. So in the labor market, that's going to determine the wage and labor supply. In the goods market, that's going to determine interest rate plus how much we produce. All right. So in the next lecture, we are going to use this intertemporal model to understand the impact, say for example, a change in government spending. To understand the impact, say for example, some like a disaster that destroy some of our capital, or the impact of innovation, like it's the discovery of new technology or widespread use of new technology, how that affect the aggregate variable. This includes labor supply, this including interest rate, including supply, including goods.